There are more cards legal in Commander than stars visible to the naked eye. Magic's card pool is so deep that it calls to some players with a greater purpose, to discover cards brimming with untapped potential and break them wide open.
For many players, this is where the real Magic begins. Exploring new, undiscovered card combinations, delving into cracks and exploits, and opening up fresh strategies and interactions.
Today, we're investigating that calling, the call of breaking a card, cracking the case, to boldly brew where no one has brewed before. So join us as we explore this shared fascination and discover the cards we keep trying to crack.
Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
What's up, everybody? You are watching / listening to the Command Zone podcast. I'm one of your hosts today, Jimmy Wong.
And I'm one of your hosts today, Jake Boss.
Wow, 2 J's in this. Actually, it's always 2 J's in this.
Yeah. How long you been here?
Oh, no. Very happy to have Jake joining us today on the podcast. We're digging a little deeper into something that impacts our format a lot, and that is cracking open cards, taking normal cards and mechanics and making them something magical. But first, got to talk about our sponsors, because we're going to talk about cracking some cards. Maybe you need to buy some cards to actually make that happen on your playmat. So go to channelfireball.com/command. That is the place to buy your Magic products, sealed products, whatever you need for Magic. These stores are going to have it. You're going to choose from LGSs all around the country. And guess what? You're going to get the cards in the condition, and you're going to get professional service, because these are real LGSs you're dealing with. And the marketplace is a place that brings them all together. So just use promo code COMMAND at checkout, or go to channelfireball.com/command. All right. And also, the show is brought to you by Ultra Pro. When you get those cards, sleeve them up, put them into a sleeve, make sure it's protected, because you're going to be going out and you're going to be doing some crazy battling, and who knows what kind of terrain your cards are going to face. So that's why you got to keep them on the Ultra Pro playmat, in Ultra Pro sleeves, in the Ultra Pro deck box. They've got everything you need to make your cards look good and play good. The play feeling. Nothing beats a good play feeling, and Ultra Pro is going to bring that to you. Finally, the last way to support the show is directly at patreon.com/commandzone. A couple of big things just happened.
Yeah, we had a lot of cool stuff happening on Patreon.
Yeah, one, we had our fan episode of Game Nights, which Jake edited lovingly with all of the team here, and it was a blast. Thank you so much, team.
Yeah, it was our longest ever, and it was a really fun episode. Whenever the fans come in, they always know our tricks. And
yeah, they're like perfect guests for the show, because they're our biggest fans. Yeah. So right now you can actually audition to be on the next Game Nights fan episode if you're a member of our Patreon. Just check it out, patreon.com/commandzone. All the details will be there. It's okay to sign up just to audition, by the way. We are looking to just make sure that we're bringing in the most, of course, ardent and awesome fans out there, so we can have another great episode. We also have a new merch store, so you can check that out. If you're a Patreon at certain levels, you get 10% or 20% off as a discount, so make sure you read the post to figure that out, or just go check it out. We got a shirt, a hat, as well as some stickers. It's the first time we've ever done it, so we hope that you can get some Game Nights merch in your house soon.
Yeah, I love that sticker pack that you
Yeah, the sticker pack. Ooh, spicy.
Our team is just killing it lately.
I know, I love it. And finally, of course, we shout out one lucky patron at every episode. So this episode is dedicated to Christopher Lamb. Christopher, you rock. You rock. All right, speaking of rocks sometimes have cracks in them, right?
Oh.
So today we're going to talk about the cards we keep trying to crack. So cracking the code on a card, it's kind of like opening a present for yourself as a player, and then using that present to make a sizable difference at the commander table. Everyone likes to do this, right? Whether you're a combo maker, you're a brewer, a Timmy, or a Spike. The idea of breaking a card and sort of getting more value out of it, doing something that's so surprising and awesome that your opponents go, wow, it's great. It's also closely tied to winning, but it doesn't actually have to need that as the main goal. So let's talk about cracking cards. First
up,
up,
when you get hooked onto a card and you're like, I know a better Magic player could do something with this, but that's not me. There are some cards that you just latch onto and you're like, I'm going to solve this puzzle.
Yeah, it looks great. I'm attracted to it for some reason. You go online, you start looking other stuff up. And
it's like Destiny.
Yeah, it is truly. Sometimes you do feel like the card is made for you, and that's why I love this game so much. But first up, we got to talk a little bit about lingo. So there's a lot of different ways to talk about this. There's busting a card open. There's cracking, breaking, broken, exploit. A lot of ways to talk about it. Do you have any favorites?
Yeah, I think that they all are kind of different. Like, they mean something different to me. Like, cracking the case on a card is I know exactly what to do with this card. This card that's been roaming around Magic forever, all alone. I have a home for it.
It's sitting in my binder, finally.
That's like cracking the case to me. But busted is like, oh yeah, if this does that with this, that it would be busted.
It is busted. And
but a broken card?
Broken?
That's something entirely different, right? Like, that's like, what did they shouldn't have done.
They shouldn't have done that. Or the broken combination, or the broken whatever it is. Is busted broken, but broken not busted? There's a lot of, I think, like, room to play with all the terms.
And in this episode especially, the fans are going to have to be in the comments section telling us what their interpretation of a lot of this stuff is.
That's a good call.
What's the difference between busted versus broken to you? Like, this is going to be a really interactive episode.
Yeah, I really like the wording, though, and humans use linguistics. We are a linguistic species. You have breaking, busting, cracking, this idea of literally like taking something and ripping it open. There's also sort of like more negative wording like exploit, use, manipulate, abuse. But because we're talking about Magic the Gathering cards, it's great because it allows us, I think, to really express what we're trying to do here. And so next, we're going to talk about the definition, at least our definition now. Yours can vary. Was it mileage will vary or whatever?
Yeah.
Your mileage will vary. So cracking a card conceptually, I think, means you're trying to surpass what the game expects you to do, right? The game itself, it's like a machine that runs set rules. And when you're doing something to crack a card open or break it or bust it, you're kind of bending the rules, and you're surprising people, you're astounding a playgroup, you're making a flashy play on game nights that people will remember forever.
Yeah, doesn't it feel fun when a card limits you and they say, only once per turn, or the first time you do this, or the second spell you cast each turn.
Right.
I think of that and as like, just watch me.
Yeah. Hold
watch me ruin your limitations that you tried to set up.
But what if? Yeah, and Magic players, I mean, we're famous for this. This is the thing that people have been doing from professional play all the way to casual. My first infinite combo was a Kiki Jiki and Pestermite, right? And I was like, I can't believe they let this happen.
Yeah, I didn't expect that to come out of this.
How dare they? And so, in terms of definitions, one of the ways that we break cards is using a card to break the rules of Commander itself. So we've all seen this now because of Shadowborn Apostles, which Josh plays a deck of, and Dragon's Approach, which Josh also has played a deck with, and cards like Persistent Petitioners, because all of them have this line of text that says a deck can have any number of cards named blank, whatever the card is. And as we know, Commander is a singleton format, so it's kind of on the card. Oh, I know how to break this. I can put as many as I want in. Haha, Commander gets around the rules because it's printed on the card.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of this type of strategy because it's so linear and it's not that exciting because it's like, hey kids, you want to crack cards? Look, we can crack it for you.
Yeah, you go to the store and it's like the pre-cracked cards. You're like, all right.
Great. I guess I'll put 30 of these in there. And
yeah.
Now the card is, $5 or whatever Shadowborn Apostles is.
Yeah, and they're all up because you can play so many of them. It's interesting though because you really do limit the way your deck works because you have to put in 25 plus to really make it feel like, well, I'm really using it to the most of its abilities. So it does limit you a bit because the rest of your deck, obviously, you don't have as many slots open. Another way that we talk about using cards to change or get around the rules of the game would be just cheating of mana costs. So this is something that has been built into Magic for a long time and is another mechanic that's sort of like printed on the Commander on the card itself. Good example is Kalia. She'll bring in an angel, demon, or dragon whenever she attacks. It was actually my first Commander. Craig Blanchett turned me onto it, and and again at the time I was like, "This is the most busted thing I've ever seen in Magic. How did they let this happen?"
Yeah, it is. When somebody plays that deck against you, you're like, "Oh, we're playing powerful decks. Let me go get my good."
Right. Yeah, and now we've had Hinata as the most recent version, but Mizzix of the Is Magnus. This idea of cheating mana cost has been on Commanders and cards, and that's again a way to sort of break the rules of the game because you're not paying the actual mana cost. Now there's other cards that, for instance, play other people's decks. There's nothing that says you can play someone else's deck, but if you play Gonti, Lord of Luxury, or Atali, Primal Storm, let that thing swing one time, Stolen Strategy. Now you're doing something that also kind of breaks the rules. You're busting, you're at the seams here, because again, it's all said on the card.
It's like all is fair in Love and War. If you're going to be bringing something to the table, you should prepare for me to Itali it.
Ah, there you
go. Thank goodness we're able to play in person a little bit more often nowadays, because
those cards do not work on spell table.
No,
Just straight up.
One of my good buddies plays, and Atali deck on spell table, and
oh no,
it's a whole lot of writing. And this card is upside down. That means something.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if I want to do a puzzle logic problem while I play the game at the same time.
It broke Magic in the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah, especially in the online version.
Yeah.
There's another way you can break it with the legendary rule. You can have now we have Mirror Gallery, Mirror Box. You also have rules that just kind of change how things work. So like Butts Matters decks with Dorn the Siege Tower, Arquette is the Strategist. And then this is a big one in the competitive community, alternate win cons. How do you win out of nowhere? Laboratory Maniac, Thassa's Oracle, Felidar Sovereign. These are all things that just say on their surface, you win the game.
And those are only so fun, too. Like, I think Thoracle is going to stick around, but Approach of the Second Sun, for me, that's a card that says you win the game on it that I've been turned off on.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Do you like playing against it to Approach of the Second Sun?
I think it's interesting to play against it sometimes because it's kind of a countdown clock, but how are you going to interact with it?
Right.
Because of the way that the trigger works and all that stuff. It's not something I like to introduce to the game.
Yeah, so again, these are they're printed on the card. So what we're talking about when it comes to breaking cards can involve this, right? Because you can do some crazy things, some combos with these cards. Again, Thoracle, the entire combo that a lot of CEDH win by just are trying to do different variations of getting to this combo. And then there are also ways to combine cards that create unusual or powerful circumstances. And this is something I think is another step that a lot of Commander players take. So cards like Phage the Untouchable, on the surface, you're like, why would you ever play this as your commander? It says when it enters the battlefield, if you didn't cast it from your hand, you lose the game. So it's your commander. You can never cast it from your hand. You're going to instantly lose the game. Well, people love playing it because you can do things like play Torpor Orb and change those enter the battlefield triggers and turn them off and actually create for them a disadvantaged situation, but one that provides sort of a challenge. Like it's a little toolbox that they want to go in and be like, can I solve this puzzle in time and beat my opponents?
Yeah. I think a strategy like that is kind of, you know what you're signing up for when you put this deck down. If you get wrecked, you get wrecked.
Yeah.
But if it goes well, that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. And honestly, it's the kind of thing where I like what opponents do when you bring decks like this to the table where they go, oh, okay, cool. Well, let's see how you made it work.
They're kind of rooting for you sometimes if you're with the
sometimes.
right group. Yeah.
The moment you start threatening to win, though, the rooting stops very quickly, I've noticed.
Yeah, maybe not at a GP.
Yeah.
But maybe as the fourth game of the night.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not. Yeah. Last games don't do the wonky stuff that makes everyone go, oh, we've been here for 3 hours.
Yeah, I could be home with my family.
My other Magic cards. There's also cards that sort of get around a lot of interesting effects by giving opponents your creatures. So Assault Suit and Tahngarth First Mate is a deck I've been looking to brew for a while.
I love that deck.
Yeah, because you're giving Tahngarth to your opponents, and it's got Menace, so it's gonna try and be, can't be blocked, and hopefully the thing's getting through. But if you do stuff like equip your swords on it, and they have damage triggers like Sword of Feast and Famine, then you're actually going to get all the benefits when you give your opponents your creature because, well, you still own the sword. So that's like an interesting way of kind of breaking what's expected with a card like that.
And that card is super cool. It doesn't just need swords. Like if you don't have a full set of swords, then you can still use stuff like Mask of Memory.
Yeah.
And there are budget options out there to make Tahngarth very
even.
Cool. Yeah, like it's nifty, But Tahngarth in particular, it's a social game too, because you're giving people this opportunity to do something that they didn't show up to the table planning to do.
Yeah.
So you're kind of enticing them to deviate from their core strategy.
You're basically altering, again, the rules of the game in a bit because you're adding on almost what feels like a mini game, but the mini game is just in the form of a card, which is, again, one of the reasons why Magic is so exciting for people. Because they even need to take someone like Mishra, Artificer, Prodigy, that says whenever you play an artifact spell, you can search your graveyard, hand, or library for a card with the same name and then put it into play. And if you search your library, shuffle it. But that doesn't make sense because it's a singleton format. But there's lots of different crazy things that people are doing with Possibility Storm or Planar Chaos that allows you to basically use these cards to your advantage. So again, you're changing the rules, you're adding in mini games, and you're making it different for your players around the table as well.
Let me ask you this. When somebody drops a Possibility Storm, how does that make you feel, though?
It kind of hurts.
Yeah.
I think Possibility Storm, and maybe this is the spirit that we're trying to get at here, which is everyone has this kind of like, I want to do this fun thing. I want to break the game. I want to crack a card. And Possibility Storm on it just reads, things are going to get crazy.
Especially when you show up with a really articulate, clean plan.
Yeah.
And somebody's like, I'm going to cast Possibility Storm.
There's
What
a
could
wrench.
happen?
Yeah. And
like,
so I groan when the person playing Possibility Storm doesn't have a way out of it. But if they're really building a deck around it, like the Mishra's Artificer deck, then there's something interesting going on.
If they have a plan with it, that's cool.
Yeah.
But if it's just let's roll a dice and cause
pure chaos,
that's not exactly like cracking the game. I think this is the most responsible use of a card like that.
There you go. Yeah. So if you want to be a responsible user of Possibility Storm, didn't think I'd ever put that sentence together in my head. And finally, there's sort of ways that also you can take like a regular or a bad card and make it better or busted. So there's a card like Ajani's Chosen. It says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white cat creature token. And if it's an aura, you can attach it to a token. And then there's Enchanted Evening, which says all permanents are enchantments in addition to the other types. So you have right there just a very simple combo that really takes an okay card, which is Ajani's Chosen. You know, it's good. You're making 2/2s. It's not as good as drawing a card, I don't think. But Enchanted Evening now turns every single thing that you do, including your lands, into 2/2 tokens. So you're taking an okay card and making it more fun.
Yeah, this is a card that you'd normally just totally pass over, and it's kind of nifty in the deck, but yeah, Enchanted Evening, it's always a trouble card, isn't it?
It definitely takes the game and, again, adds another layer, another sort of mini game on top. And the same thing goes for Life and Limb and Spore Mound, but Life and Limb is a card that I hope I don't see. It says all forests and all saplings are 1/1 green sapling creature tokens and forest lands in addition to the other types. So if you have a forest on your side of the battlefield, this thing will affect you. And Spore Mound's basically the same thing. Anytime a land enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1, but they're all lands, and so you infinitely make a blah. You just go nuts.
Yeah, this is these two cards kind of crack each other. However, is this fun? Is this what you're trying to do? What's the plan after this happens? Do we let a round of the table pass before, or
are you trying to play Impact Tremors and kill everyone with the combo? So I think
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. And then another card I love seeing if someone has a way to make it win is Biovisionary. Have you ever lost to Biovisionary?
No, I haven't. I almost lost to it in an extra turns game. But
got real close.
Got really close.
Yeah, Biovisionary, it says if you control 4 or more creatures named Biovisionary at your end step, you win the game. And it's very hard to do so. There are a lot of cards that will do it, but you're opening yourself up to sort of like it can just get removed really easily. But again, it's a fun mini game, and it's another way to take a card and make it busted, make it better, taking cracking it.
Yeah, the whole table says, wait a second, are we doing the Death Star Trench Run Biovisionary move right now?
Wait. You're trying to Biovisionary out right now? I just got going.
You cast what card?
Yeah. Okay, so when we're talking about cards that can or cannot crack themselves, it's a big component to understanding why we want to crack cards. Because a lot of times, for Magic especially in recent years, there have been cards that unfortunately, for me, kind of, they fall below the bar of, oh, this is fun, because there are cards that crack themselves.
Yeah.
And we're trying to be the innovators and the brains behind figuring out how to make this card do something crazy. And if a card cracks itself, it doesn't feel as great.
It tells you what to do. And
puts you on rails a little bit.
Yeah, that's not why we're trying to crack cards. It's
indeed.
That's easy. Come on.
Yeah, so all-in-one commanders. I'm sure you can already start thinking of them if you're watching or listening from home. Urza, Lord High Artificer. Yeah. Every single line of text on this thing says, hello, this is what I do. This first thing relates to the second thing. The second thing relates to the third thing. And then the third thing actually can use the other things, right? So you can just play the card by itself and you begin to do everything on it. It's like a self-built engine.
And it must be really hard to play this deck perfectly too.
Oh,
because there are so many options. Like it's begging for, somebody to tell you, well, you could have done this, and this, and
Yeah,
that.
It's almost too cracked in a way because you don't want to get into a situation where all of a sudden 1,000 lines of play opened up in front of you because your single commander every time gives you the ability to do everything.
And you get stuck in analysis paralysis mode.
Yeah, indeed. And the same goes for Tulane, Teller of Tales, which is why I think it's a widely sort of disliked design. And then Corvold, Fey-Cursed King, I think takes the top for, oh boy, it just cracks itself.
Everybody always says about their deck, oh, it's a nice Urza, it's a nice Tulane, it's a nice
Corvold.
Lady Danger.
Yeah.
But that's just not possible, I don't think.
No, it's definitely not.
Strategies are so easy to assemble.
Yeah, it self-synergizes. And I would say, actually, there's nothing wrong with this inherently. I think it's actually great to give players a version of a card so that if they don't want to think about cracking in the wide open, they just have a pile of 99 and their commander. You can actually still make these commanders work for the most part because there's so many sacrifice effects for Corvold, so many ways to get lands on the battlefield or casting creatures with Tulane.
It's just important to keep it in mind that you are playing a crack card.
Mm-hmm.
You're
playing
even if you didn't crack it, somebody did.
Yeah, the designers themselves cracked it, and that's why the card cracks itself.
Yeah.
There's also cards that I like to call all-in-one cards, so they're kind of like all-in-one commanders, but in this case, it's like Smothering Tithe, Dockside Extortionist, Jessica's Will. Again, everything on the card itself just says, you really don't have to do much else. Yeah. This will do the work for you. It'll get there.
You look at these cards and you didn't think to yourself, somebody must be able to crack it, but I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not skilled enough. It's just right on the card.
And you'll notice that the general opinion of these cards it tends to be slightly more on the negative side because of that. Ristic say, do you pay the one? The famous, infamous phrase. Everyone's like, ugh, gross, asking again the whole game. And that's because, again, the cards do so much on their own that you lose a little bit of that innovator spirit that we're trying to talk about today. And finally, tutors. If you have a tutor, you can find the card that cracks itself, so it also counts as a crack card. Why, again, tutors are very good.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like a tutor as a support card is not the worst. Like, let's say I'm playing a janky strategy or something. I need to go get something. But somebody casts a demonic tutor and goes to get something that handles your stuff directly. It's not a feels good moment.
Yeah, and that's why you see it much more when people are playing competitively, because they need to find the exact right answer at the right time. And Magic has a little bit of that. I think there's a growing sort of split between very much more on the casual side, and as well, we're trying to slow down the format now, I think. Or we're trying to make the format as slow as it can be. We're just trying not to speed it up.
Yeah.
And there are people that are totally fine going down that more speedy route. And so you'll often see that divide as well between the sort of, there's a lot of innovation on every side of it. And that's sort of a lot of the fun, I think, of cracking cards too, is because everyone is trying to do it relative to their own sort of power and play group.
It's a really good point. I think that we should make it very clear. This is, we're coming from the perspective of people who are trying to crack cards.
Right.
And I'm not always that person that's trying to crack cards. Sometimes I'm that person that wants to play Thoracle Win Condition,
Yeah, I'm sometimes that person that I played a Corval deck the other night and I went, wow, this feels so good.
Yeah.
I'm doing so much and I didn't have to stress about it so much. I didn't have to be so reactive. I just had it all.
Yeah.
Oh, fun. Okay, so we have cards that crack themselves, and then we also have cards that don't crack themselves. And if you didn't realize, this is the rest of the cards in Magic's history, pretty much, outside of that first few categories that we talked about. And I typically, when I look at a card, I like to think about how many steps does it take to get to the result that you want. That's why cards like Urza, Chulane, Corvold crack themselves. They take 0 steps. The card itself does all the work. So we can take a look at cards like Godo, Bandit Warlord. This is what I would call a one-step to get cracked card. Because you play it, you're going to find an equipment. Helm of the Host is the one that goes infinite, but you still have to play that equipment, equip him, and then swing. And then you, of course, get all the benefits from it. But if you don't have that equipment to find with Godo, then he's still a one step to get cracked, because you might find something else that fits the table. You get a Sword of Feast and Famine because you all have black and green opponents or whatever it is.
And spoiler, we saw this happen on game nights.
We did.
If you haven't seen the Neon Dynasty episode, you certainly should go watch it right now.
Right now. Pause this silly episode of the podcast. You don't need to watch this thing.
Yeah, I figure we can probably spoil this part, though. Post Malone had Helm of the Host in hand, so he plays his Godo. He can't go get it. He has to go get a Cauldron Complete.
Yeah.
So the game could have been over right there.
Could have been over right there, but he's still...
The one hurdle,
yeah, he had it in his hand. But he still has to play it, right? It doesn't like come out by itself and says like, all right, you're all set now, because someone could counter maybe the Helm of the Host on the way down or whatever it is. In this case, Godo puts it on the battlefield, so you have to stifle a trigger. So it's a little more tough.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
I would also say cards like the Great Henge and Zendikar Resurgent are very good, but they don't crack themselves because you still have to, do a little bit more. You have to play a creature and then you start really getting the engine going. It's kind of similar to like Chulane, but it's right on the edge of it cracks itself, and it's just needs to get cracked a little bit by the player.
Yeah, if you burst into the room and say, I've got it, I've cracked the Great Henge and Zendikar Resurgent, everybody's going to be like, of course you did.
Of course you did, yeah, it's on the card. And then now we're getting into the real brewer's mindset, is because you're going in now to 2 steps.
Oh, yeah.
So Tatsunari Toad Rider, this requires a couple of steps. You have to play Tatsunari, and then you have to play an enchantment, and then you get this little Kami frog that starts to do the thing that maybe you're trying to do. So you're very far removed from the first step of it, and there are also a bunch of sort of restrictions along the way. So I call this like a 2-step card to get cracked. It takes a little bit of time and effort. Same goes for Emil the Blessed. You saw this on our episode of Game Nights. A lot of times on the fan episode, Zach has a great board, but he has to set it up. It doesn't just happen instantly. Even though it's still really scary, he still had to get the creatures out and then do something, or then do something to get the effects. So it's similar to Emil.
It's a really powerful thing once you get everything there, once everybody's in the room. But yeah, it's a long journey there.
Yeah, and then I would say the worst, or the hardest, not worst, is multiple step cards. So these are cards that take a few steps to actually begin cracking it. And this is kind of where a lot of our sort of conversation about why we keep wanting crack cards starts. Because 0-step crack cards, not that interesting. 1-step crack cards, okay, a little interesting. 2, 3, 4, and beyond is when you get into the point where you're like, I have a brilliant idea, and it only requires 10 different pieces to land on the board to do it. So like the 1,000-Year Storm, I think is a good example of this. You've just played this enchantment by itself. It's 6 mana, does nothing. And then you have to start casting and copying instant or sorcery spells over the course of your turn. But if you only do it once or twice, it's not that good. Once you get to like 4, 5, 6 spells is when you start to crack it. And you're finding ways to get more mana, untap, high tide, whatever it is. And then you begin to crack 1,000-Year Storm.
Yeah, if somebody says that they have a 1,000-Year Storm deck, that's pretty exciting. Like, I'm pretty sure I could interact with that.
Yeah.
I'm interested. Yeah, let's play.
Yeah, let's see what's going to happen and see how you're going to set it up. How you're going to get that big turn to go off. Is there a way that we can stop it before it happens?
It's not an off-putting card that makes you groan and say, oh, great, another 1,000-Year Storm.
I will say, if I see Corvold, it does elicit a little bit of I really hope they take their turns quickly, because 1,000-Year Storm, by the way, is the exact same thing, but ideally, by the time they're casting it and getting it going, they're nearing the end of the game or doing something so big that's like, cool, your big payoff card got there. And I love seeing the process.
Yeah.
And then I think the sagas are a great example of multiple step cards too, because you have to wait multiple turns for the saga to reach completion and to really do your thing moving in between the stages.
If you see somebody cracking a saga deck and they're popping off, you're like, good for you. Keep going.
I'm stoked for the saga player. And finally, I think it looks like we're going to get playing more in the future, but I think we are definitely at this point where you could build a really spicy saga deck.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of different ways to go with it too. You can do anything from Atraxa to the Selesnya commander we got recently.
Yeah. Or you could just straight go Kami War status and just be very thematic to all of the Kamigawa and Neon Dynasty sagas too. All right, so we're finally about to jump into the cards that we're trying to crack and why we keep trying to crack them. But I think the process of getting here is still really important, is to understand what the lingo means, why players are attracted to it and the definition of it, and then understanding the differences between a card that sort of cracks itself and cards that don't. And then the further you get from a card that cracks itself, the excitement begins to sort of get higher and higher, because the possibilities start expanding outwards as you open your eyes to a larger sort of set of cards to play with. So when we started asking ourselves the question about what cards we want to keep trying to crack, we have some pretty easy and simple qualifiers, and we think this should apply to most people that are interested in this world of Magic, which is the cards can't crack themselves, because then you're not really doing the cracking. So they require more than a single step, typically 2 to 3 plus more steps. They're usually tied to your play style and personal interests as a Commander player or a Magic player, because that's what drew you to thinking, ooh, I really like this. Maybe I can turn it into something new. And that's brilliant, because it means that everyone's version of what they want to crack is unique to them.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting. And then finally, they're good or they're fun in Commander, because that's the format that we're playing. So with those 3 simple criteria, we are ready to start talking about the cards that we keep trying to crack. Maybe you watching along can have a little light bulb turn on over your head over a few of them and contribute as well.
Yeah, let us know if you've cracked these cards, because I've got a few on here that I'm actually really excited about.
Really? Nice. Well, before we get into it, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our mid-roll sponsors.
All right, first I'm gonna play this gorgeous full art John Avon forest.
Ooh, look at those trees. They're beautiful.
It's like we're in the woods right now.
Yeah, in fact, I think I can smell it.
Oh, that's me. I've been using Everyman Jack body wash, deodorant, and skincare. With scents inspired by the great outdoors, Everyman Jack makes every day a getaway. My cedarwood body wash leaves me smelling great, and it's perfect for when I'm playing mono green. And beyond skincare, Everyman Jack offers shampoo, conditioner, and oils to nourish your hair and beard.
Ooh, my beard, you say?
And best of all, Everyman Jack products use clean, naturally derived ingredients without any of the harsh chemicals like parabens and dyes that can be abrasive to your skin and leave it feeling dry. And everything comes in responsibly made packaging, so you can feel good about feeling good. Speaking of which, I play Craterhoof Behemoth.
Oh no.
Feels bad, man.
Well, at least the cedarwood covers the smell of defeat.
Everyman Jack Men's Care. Naturally derived, outdoor inspired. Look for them at Target, Walmart, Amazon, or everymanjack.com.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy.
Welcome to my peace garden. I am Kosei, penitent warlord. Now I know what you're thinking. You need to be enchanted and equipped and have a counter on you? That's so much work! To which I say, yes, it takes a lot of investment to make me shine. But isn't that true for all of us? Taking care of and improving ourselves is a vital part of life, and talking with a therapist through BetterHelp has been a great way for me to do both. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp online therapy. Alright, now that I have a counter, I'm enchanted, equipped, and therapized. I'm ready to... Oh, you have removal? Well, peace out.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Command Zone listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/CommandZone. That's BetterHelp.com/CommandZone.
Hey Josh, nice sports date you got there. Shame if someone cast Wrath of God.
Ooh, Boros Charm, indestructible.
Ooh, I got this. Hex.
Veil of Summer, hex-proof.
Well, Cyclonic Rim.
Wow! It's Fairy's protection. Everything's gone. Bye.
How do you always have an answer?
Oh, well, I wouldn't be caught dead without insurance. That's why I use Policy Genius to shop for life insurance. Life insurance isn't just for when you're older. If you have anyone relying on you, like a child, aging parent, or partner, you ought to have it. Luckily, Policy Genius makes it easy to shop for and buy life insurance all in one place. To get started, just click the link in the description or head to policygenius.com/command. Answer some simple questions and they'll hook you up with quotes from top companies so you can find your lowest rate. You can save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. And once you've chosen a quote, Policy Genius's team of experts will help you apply for the policy and understand your options. They work for you, not the insurance companies, so you can trust them to offer unbiased advice. Head to policygenius.com/command to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save.
All right, welcome back. We are talking about cards that we keep trying to crack. We're enough talking about the methodology. You're probably like, man, I sat here and listened to this podcast and they didn't talk about a single card they want to crack. But we're going to do that right now, so let's get right into it. I'm going to start off with one that we already mentioned on the show, and that is Tatsunari Toad Rider. So I'm going to read the card for everyone. It is a 2 in the black for a 3/3 legendary creature, human ninja. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, if you don't control a creature named Kami, create Kami, a legendary 3/3 black and green frog creature token with, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. It also has another ability that you can make Kami and Tatsunari and a target frog unblockable, but that's not what we're talking about here. Ever since I built this on game nights, I spent like 5 hours sitting at the computer being like, I'm going to crack this because I'm going to play this on game nights in front of Post Malone. It's going to be so cool. I'm going to get it going. And I didn't actually get all the way to cracking the case wide open.
You got really close.
Thanks.
On the show.
I got very close on the show. I had some big turns, but I missed out on a couple of things that I think really would have made the brewer inside me happy. And it's because WotC has actually put a step in front of me now. And so before we've seen cards like Corval that do all the steps by themselves, and you talked a little bit about this too, Jake. There are cards now that WotC prints and they have specific wording that actually make it more difficult to crack, and as a result, makes it more interesting to crack for me as a brewer.
It's a challenge. Like, I bet you can't crack this.
I bet you can't. Yeah, and we're designing it so that you can't as well because we don't want it to be so easy. So this says here, right, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you create, and if you don't control a creature named Kami, create Kami. So that right there is a very deep restriction. You can't just have Kami out, cast an enchantment and make another one. It sees it, it waits until you don't have it, and it's not when the enchantment enters the battlefield either. You have to cast it. And the same goes for Kami. You have to cast an enchantment spell to get the drain going. So on the show, I was like, aha, I'm going to do sacrifice outlets. I can sack Kami over and over again to Ashnod's Altar, Phyrexian Altar, get mana, use that mana to cast more enchantments, create more Kamis. But at a certain point, you will run out of mana and gas.
Right, we were running a lot of cheap enchantments in that deck too.
Very cheap, 1 mana, 2 mana.
It's just in, out, over and over again.
Yeah, I thought it'd be really funny to have a sound effect of a frog boinging in and boinging out, boinging in and boinging out.
Why didn't you tell me?
I should have. I know. I should have. Darn. And so that was my first way of thinking, I want to crack this by getting around this. And so you have a lot of payoffs. You have like Blasting Station that untaps itself when Kami comes back. You've got cards like Deathmatch. Whenever a creature comes in the battlefield, that creature's controller may have another target creature get -3/-3 until end of turn. So now Kami's just killing things as it comes in. There's cards like Cream of of the Crop, which is an enchantment. This is whenever a creature comes into play under your control, you may look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that creature's power, and you put one on the top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So if you imagine lining these up, you have Cream of the Crop out and Deathmatch. Every time Kami comes in, you're going to make a creature -3/-3. You're going to filter your top 3 cards, and it's kind of like a turbo scry over and over and over again.
And this is really smart too, because you weren't latched on to the fact that this is an Enchantress deck. Like, let me build a whole bunch of Enchantress draw triggers and keep my engine going. You're focused on this ETB thing that's going to be happening anyway. I may as well take advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of different things, like Season of Growth lets you scry, Path of Discovery lets you explore, Intruder Alarm untaps all your creatures. So I didn't actually find a lot of these cards until later. I went on Scryfall and did a much more deep search. And I was like, aha, I found it. I got tons of these new ways of cracking it. And then when we were doing the episode for the Deck Tech, someone said, Jimmy, there's a discussion going around about Mutate.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wait a second. They've just cracked the card.
Because it's named Kami. That's what's in the clause. If it's named Kami, then Tatsunari will see it.
However, if you mutate onto Kami with Insatiable Hemophage, Brokos, Apex of Forever, Boneyard Lurker, the name of Kami changes to the new mutated creature, but you still have the enchantment clause that drains everyone. So in this deck now, I saw it so clearly. All the pieces clicked into place and went, that's what I was missing. A way to make another Kami.
I love mutate cards for this reason.
Exactly.
Like, at the time, we were kind of cool on it, and sure, it's fun, it's neat, it's something new.
Yeah.
But being able to change the name of a card, that's something we haven't thought about all that much.
Yeah, exactly. Really exciting stuff. That's sort of the moment it became cracked to me. One other thing we're going to talk about all the cards when we talk about cards we want to keep cracking is why it's tough. So this one's easy, I think. People see a combo being formed. You got all these pieces out there, and then they're just going to pick away at it. They're going to do something that wipes out all your enchantments or artifacts. They're just going to blow up. My Phyrexian Altar got blown up, and that was almost game over for me at that point, I felt like. So you have to really play a lot of other responsive cards like Heroic Intervention and stuff to protect your stuff or regrow it out of your graveyard.
Yeah, the protection package is something that's interesting because single target removal, it's easy to kind of put just removal spells in there. But in your deck, your removal is winning the freaking game. So,
yeah, it's a good point.
let's Heroic Intervention, cards like this that'll save us from the sadness.
All right, another card that we keep trying to crack. This one was a popular one at the office. It's Abundance.
Yeah.
We talk about this card actually a decent amount because it's just got a bunch of text on it. So I'll read it and we'll talk about it. 2 green enchantment. If you would draw a card, you may instead choose land or non-land and reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. Put that card into your hand and all other cards revealed this way onto the bottom of your library in any order.
So you're always going to get what you want, whether land or non-land.
Much. Yeah, you choose, okay, untap, upkeep, draw. I want a non-land. You start flipping cards. So you find a non-land, and then everything else goes on the bottom of your library in any order, and you get that card at the top.
And it's a replacement effect, too, so you don't technically draw a card if drawing would be bad for you.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's really interesting because like with cards like Sylvan Library, it says at the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. So that's 3 instances of abundance. And now you're starting to see, wait a minute, the text on this, the way they phrased it, to me as someone that's trying to crack this card, it got really exciting.
Yeah.
I want to find other ways of doing interesting things here, of drawing more cards, and maybe because I'm putting it on my library in any order, maybe I can stack my whole deck a certain way. So I think there's a lot of interesting text there because, again, abundance just gives you an effect, but you have to find a few different ways to really expound upon it.
Yeah, thinking about stacking your deck, that kind of stuff always gets you excited as a brewer. It's like,
what if you could control every card in your deck, order top to bottom?
Yeah, it's like those landless decks that you hear about in, deck techs that are always like popular from the old school days.
Yeah.
Like 45 lands and 15 creatures. Check this out. Click
Check this out. I'm going to rock your world.
Abundance is one of those cards that gets those wheels spinning of, well, what if every card was this?
Yeah, and Cultivator Colossus is the most recent card to get printed that says when there's the battlefield, you can put a land card from your battlefield, a hand on the battlefield, and if you do, you draw a card and repeat the process.
But wait, Jimmy.
If you replace the draw and always get a land, Cultivator Colossus gets every single land out of your library.
Oh my goodness.
Unfortunately, it costs 11 total mana to do, which is what brings us to why it's tough. Abundance, as much as I want to play this card and crack it, it's not your commander. It's not your whole deck.
Probably doesn't do anything the turn it comes in.
It almost always doesn't do it. Yeah, almost always I think doesn't do anything the turn it comes in. If someone removes it, oh no. And if you're looking for Cultivator Colossus specifically to break it, that's 2 cards out of 100 that costs 11 total mana. So I think it's interesting. Abundance still sits in this really hard place for me, trying to figure out, is it worth it if you're just using a couple of cards to crack it with, or are you trying to find a commander that maybe goes perfectly with it?
And I think it kind of goes into the same family of scry. Is this card advantage? We could probably do an entire episode about the theory of abundance and whether it's card advantage or not.
Is this card advantage or not? So 4-mana enchantments, tough spot to be in. Okay, we already talked about a little bit about this earlier, but Tahngarth First Mate is the next
love
up.
this card.
Man, I love
Such
this
a good
card
card.
too. Do you want to read it, Jake?
Sure. Tahngarth First Mate is a 2 and a red and a green for legendary creature Minotaur Warrior, and he's a 5/5. Tahngarth First Mate can't be blocked by more than one creature.
Nice.
So, like, anti-menace?
Anti-menace, yeah.
I don't think they'll ever keyword that one. Whenever an opponent attacks with one or more creatures, if Tahngarth is tapped, you may have that opponent gain control of Tahngarth until end of combat. If you do, choose a player or planeswalker that player is attacking. Tahngarth is attacking that player or planeswalker. So the pattern would be, I get Tahngarth tapped on my turn, whether it's by way of attacking or whatever, pass the turn, and I say to my opponent, if you're interested, you could send Tahngarth at that person that I just sent him at, and we could commander damage them out this round.
Oh, boy.
Because Tahngarth, you always think about the Swords Up series.
Yep.
So that
you control the swords if it's on Tahngarth. When he goes to your opponent, they control Tahngarth, but not the swords. So you get the triggers when those swords trigger. Sort of the Animist, anything that has a on attack or combat damage trigger, basically.
And that being said, he has a super relevant power toughness of 5/5 because then he gets to a 7/7.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm playing Tahngarth, I swing and I hit Ashland for 7. I say to Jimmy, Ashland's a major problem here, and I've got protection from green, and she's playing a mono green deck.
Ooh, exciting.
So Jimmy sends it. And then Lady says, oh, you guys are terrible people, but I'm bad too. And then we knock Ashland out of the game with 21 commander damage.
In a single round, yeah. It's such an interesting thing because you are playing within the rules of Commander, and you're doing it, and you're trying to kill them in a new interesting way, which is 21 total damage. So as you can imagine, there's lots of different things to think about. You know, how do you make this guy indestructible?
Yeah, and taking advantage of commander damage as it was meant to be.
As it was meant to be.
With a 7/7.
Yeah, I mean, you want to make him untargetable. There's so many different things you have to think about, and how do you build cards into your deck so that Tahngarth can go out there and swing. I do think, though, it's a little tough because Combat Matters decks and Voltron ones, they really don't do well with instant speed interaction and removal. Even if you're trying to equip it, you have to really be careful about the spot that you put the stuff on. And, you know, once you get rid of one player, who's to say the next player is not going to go, wait a minute, I don't want that to happen to me next. And you go, well, I can't guarantee that. I'm so sorry.
And the timing of it and the amount of resources that you have to spend to kind of make everything enticing, it's not always going to work out for you, because when you would be, say, drawing cards, you have to be playing your sword and passing the turn and doing nothing.
Yeah.
So you really have to think about the order of when I'm going to do things and the opportunity cost of the strategy.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because the opportunity cost of the strategy is another thing to factor in when you're trying to crack a card. You're not just cracking it and everyone's playing the exact way you want them to. With a card like Tahngarth, you actually have to do a little bit of politicking and figure, is this the right game to enact that strategy? Or maybe you have to go with strategy B in this case, because just sending him at the same player 3 times isn't going to work.
If I have a Sword of Hearth and Home that's green and white versus a Sword of Truth and Justice that's white and blue, it's like, which player am I going to hose? Which sword do I cast?
You're evaluating their boards. Are they able to interact with it? Are you striking deals with different people? So it's definitely, I think, a tough card to crack, both in gameplay and on the card itself.
Right.
The next one is a Josh Lee Kwai favorite. We couldn't go this episode without talking about it. The card we're trying to crack and keep trying to crack, and will keep cracking throughout all of Magic's history, because I think it's really relevant, is Maseveth.
Oh, yeah.
The animation for this, by the way, as a side note.
That's an Evan Limburger special.
Wow.
Thing was something special.
That thing, I felt chills down my spine when I watched it. Maybe we can play it for the podcast, the video
let's
viewers.
do it.
Yeah, let's run it. The Maseveth.
We are back.
Wow. I don't know where time went. I believe I just disappeared into an infinite nothingness for a hot second there. So Maseveth is a land that can go in any deck. It's got no color identity, and because of the complexity of the combat step, there's always new and interesting ways to use it and make it interesting. It's very similar to Reconnaissance, a card that you can pay 0 mana, and you can remove target attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. But Maseveth is a land, so you can play it as a land drop. There are ways to untap it as well. It's really interesting because when I first started playing this, I only thought of it as stop Craig's infect creature from attacking me.
Exactly. That kind of is what makes sense. Untap target attacking creature. When would you ever want to do that and prevent the damage? Yeah.
Do it when, and then I got to it's like that meme with the different brains. Yeah. So using Maseveth on your own creature, and then using Maseveth on an opponent's creature on an opponent. Like, oh, you're going to combat against Jake? I can maze it for you if you give me a favor.
Yeah. Oh man, the politics of this card. It's always on display because like when we're playing game nights, we'll be looking at the board and be like, wait a second, Josh, you could do this if that person wants to make a deal with you.
Yeah.
Wow, this just it's got really complicated.
It got really complicated. And the fact that it's a one-time use too makes it even more of like I can only do it once, but when I do it, it's going to be an impactful moment. And then the third level is using Maseveth on your own attackers. So why would you ever want to untap your own creatures? Well, if you have an Argothian Elder or a Corrosive Restorer, they untap more than one land. When you untap them, they can tap and untap the Maseveth and another land. And you can just keep that cycle going over and over and over and over and over again until you generate infinite mana.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
now that is cracked.
That is cracked. That is now you're in the brewer's mindset.
Yeah, I was expecting us to go a little bit more whack, but that's straight cracked.
It's just straight cracked.
With a T.
Yeah, and you can also get attack triggers and then remove them from combat with Ishin, by the way. You get all these attack triggers. I don't want it swinging at you because it's gonna die anyway, so I'm gonna remove it from combat. But I get all the triggers of what happens anyway.
And if you have a really fragile strategy, then being able to protect your commander and make risky moves and stuff, like let's say I'm gonna tempt you with the block and you go for it. And I'm like, well,
all right,
I'm a pretty bad commander player, so I'm gonna pull that back.
It is a good insurance policy. It's true. You hope they don't call you on the bluff because you want to use the maze for something else.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. It's got a lot of politics tied to it, but it's tough because actually it's not that tough. It doesn't take up a land slot.
Yeah.
Just don't put it in as your 37th or 36th land. But I think the power of this card, to me, it feels like a card that should go in so many different decks because you realize new ways to crack it sometimes in the middle of a game.
It is wild how relatively few decks that we see this card in, based on how good it is and the fact that it's colorless.
It's colorless. Everyone gets a crack at Maseveth to try and crack it. The next up is the idea of Menace or Death Touch Tribal. This is a concept that I've been espousing and trying to figure out now for the last 3-4 years, and it feels like we keep getting more cards that are pointing in that direction, which is exciting. We finally got, I think, the sort of the best two commanders for it, which is Kedis Emberclaw Familiar, who partners with Falthus Shadowcat Familiar. So you just have like a little lizard cat deck, but you have a commander that helps deal damage to every opponent when it deals damage, and then you have another commander that says commanders you control have Menace and Death Touch. This is one of those things where it's like us seeing white get more card draw. Wizards is slowly adding more onto it. They're getting more and more cards that have Death Touch Tribal, like Zagreus, Thief of Heartbeats.
So basically, whenever a new card comes out, you're sitting back there just looking for the Menace and the Death Touch.
Yeah, pretty much. And the way I'm trying to crack it, because it's not a single card, is asking at what point does this become not just a viable commander deck, but a fun one?
Yeah.
Because you can make any commander deck viable if you just it's Death Touch Tribal. You have those commanders, and then you just put all the best mana rocks, all the good stuff in, and then a few highlighted creatures. But that to me doesn't get the essence of being a Menace Death Touch Tribal deck. There's ways to, for instance, equip a card like Varek Battlehorns, which makes a Menace creature basically unblockable. And then, oh my gosh, we rarely do this, but we're talking about a brand new card that just got spoiled. It's Elder Brain. Menace,
the art on this thing is freaking crazy.
It is freaking crazy, but this is a card that I think answers a question to how you crack a card or an idea, is actually getting a legit win condition in, and I think Elder Brain actually fits that. So this is a new card from Battle for Baldur's Gate, 5 black for a 6/6 Menace Horror. Whenever Elder Brain attacks a player, exile all cards from that player's hand, then they draw that many cards. You may play lands and cast spells from among the exiled cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. So it's on an attack, it makes you instantly wheel your hand, and then you can cast all the cards in that player's hand.
That's wild.
This to me finally says, okay, you want to do Menace just Tribal, here's a win condition that has Menace on it. The idea of it being hard to block is why it's so good, and thus the equation I think is finally coming together, and I'm so very happy.
It's funny because you look at this and you don't think to yourself, oh, Menace and Death Touch Tribal, that's exactly what this goes in. But the player who's been trying to crack Menace and Death Touch Tribal for so long is sitting back there and is like, I've got it.
I've got it, finally.
The circle is now complete.
Elder Brain has come to join the party. Otherwise, you're doing stuff like Quietus Spike, which halves a player's life when they get hit, or you're going wide with a bunch of tokens with Gruul War Chant. So that to me is like why it's kind of tough to really crack the code on it.
But that's like forgive me, but that's like smooth brain stuff. We want to do elder brain
brain stuff. Yeah, definitely a horror. Yeah, and that's why it's tough. I think when you have such a universal evergreen mechanic, you can really go in a bunch of different ways. So for me, I'm just going the most basic. What is the win condition of this deck? I don't want it to be, Menace plus Crater Hoof Behemoth.
Yeah, that's easy. That's not what we're doing here.
That's not what we're doing here. Okay, next up, we have the Hunted series. Jake, do you play any of these cards?
Oh, I've wanted to for a long time because every time you look at them, you're like, something somewhere is to be done about this.
Yeah, so this is something that we're actually going to open up to the audience because I know there's a bunch of really interesting ways to use these cards. But basically, all the Hunted cards say when they enter the battlefield, you give an opponent a bunch of stuff.
Like survivor tokens.
3/2/2 white knight creatures. They create a 4/4 horror creature. They get 5/1/1 red goblins. But the creature you play is like very well costed. So like Hunted Phantasm is 1 blue, can't be blocked, 4/6. That's a huge creature, but you give an opponent a bunch of goblins. But in Commander, it's like, wait a minute, I could maybe give it to my friend Jake over here and never swing at him with it. It would be a great deal.
Or wait a second, if I just play Karavak, that gives -1/-1 to everything.
And then they're all going to die. Wow.
That was not in the outline. We're just sitting here like vibing on.
We're vibing on the Hunted mechanic. So it's interesting. It's this really, and I think a lot of players have asked, how do I get a Hunted creature into my deck? I've been trying to do it for a long time. Just to be like, I want it in the deck and I want it to feel good and work. But I also don't want it to take away from the deck so much that it's now kind of that idea. But maybe there's a world, again, to make the Hunted cards work, enjoyable for yourself, viable in Commander, and fun for your opponents.
Yeah, I think a good way to look at this is similar to Zedru, where Zedru is very obvious. You want to give your opponents bad permanents. But in this case, we're like, how can we make it bad for them to have these creatures? Or how can I take what was meant to be a counterbalancing act and twist it into something that's not fair?
Yeah, and you can obviously be like, never attack me with the 5/1/1. So I'd be like, sure, that seems a little, I'll give you 2 turns. But there's other things you can be doing that I think are interesting. Like, and it's really that group hug dynamic that I think has been really hard to crack for a lot of players. Because when you play group hug, you still kind of have to bring the game to a conclusion unless you're trying to intentionally draw it. So when you're doing these things, how do you make it so that it's still dynamic and fun, but isn't like full stacks or lockdown or whatever it is?
Yeah, you like to believe that everybody has a plan when they do something like this. Like, if they're going to give everybody shields up, then please do something to end the game eventually.
Yep. I think Zedru the Great-Hearted is kind of the similar idea behind the Hunted, so maybe there's a world where those cards are similar. All right, there's a new card here from, it's kind of new, from Jamie, one of our writers. He said, I keep trying to crack Bramble Sovereign, but I just can't figure it out. So, Jake, you want to read the card?
Sure. Bramble Sovereign, 2 green for a creature dryad. It's a 4/4. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield, you may pay 1 and a green. If you do, that creature's controller creates a token that's a copy of that creature.
Wow. The text on this is very interesting. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield, not under your control, under anyone's control, you can give them a copy for 1 and a green.
Why would we do this?
Exactly.
Why? There must be a reason.
There must be a reason. That's why I want to crack this card. I can see why Jamie wants to crack it too. It opens up this interesting space, just like the Hunted cards, where it's like, would I want to do this for an opponent?
It's like the Da Vinci Code, or did you ever watch Lost? I think you did, right?
Oh, yeah, I watched all of Lost.
Like when they had the brainwashing video and it said, God loves you as he loved Jacob.
Oh, yeah.
Why is it in the past tense?
Why is it in the past tense?
Why does it say, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield, not under my control?
Under anyone's control.
I can pay 1 and a green.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Why can't they do that? But if they did that, would that be good, or is it better that I can do that?
It all has to mean something.
Yeah, I like that. Cracking a card is asking it all has to mean something.
There must be a plan.
We have to go back, Jack. So it's really interesting. I think like with Gired, Conclave Exile, you can make your creatures into tokens and then populate them. That's like a cool little process there.
Yeah.
But that's just still using it for your own stuff. So maybe you're playing a propaganda type deck where you want everyone to go nuts and you're just fully behind a solid fort.
Yeah, like you invite them, go ahead, attack each other while you're constantly funding it.
Yeah, exactly. And so you'd play Bramble Sovereign and some other stuff, being like, it's so nice to enjoy the show. You're eating popcorn as your opponents go to war.
Yeah, no, you guys keep going at it.
Yeah, maybe you play Arena, maybe that it's a fight deck and that's what you're doing. All right, I'll give you another fighter for your side. So I think it's really interesting. I do like this card a lot, but I still haven't figured out how to crack it just from a couple of, like a couple of nights of thinking about it since Jamie submitted it.
Yeah, it's an interesting card for sure. But as always with all of these cards, let us know how to crack Bramble Sovereign in the comments.
That would be very cool if people figured out a way. Or you play Winter Orb. This is the dumbest way. You can only untap one land every untap step. So you're like, all right, well, that's 1 mana towards the Bramble Sovereign trigger.
Great.
Who's going to earn it on this turnaround of the table?
Yeah, okay, playing Winter Orb is one way to crack Bramble Sovereign.
Yeah, that's
great.
Great. Yeah, just a big ugh. Next up are vehicles. So I think a lot of people are now eyeing the vehicles.deck. We have Shorikai, Genesis Engine, and Kotori Pilot Prodigy. They're finally more promising than ever, but are they at the crackable phase yet?
Vehicles, they always throw a wrench into whatever deck building template you have.
Pun?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a pun.
I'm going to lean into it. Yes, it was.
Yeah. And it was interesting because if you look at Josh's deck, he played in Shorikai deck on game nights, but there were not that many vehicles in it. It was about the drawing and discarding and making the tokens and untapping artifacts.
Yeah, I don't think Josh looked at this card and said, oh, finally, I can build my vehicles deck.
My vehicles deck. I've been so looking
He
forward
probably
to.
thought, oh, finally, I can play my drawing cards deck.
Yeah. I looked at a card like Mech Titan Core, right? This thing exiles other artifact creatures or vehicles, and you make a 10/10 crazy legendary. It's like straight out of an anime. But is it worth it? Is this enough to build a deck around? Is this cracking the vehicles, the thing for vehicles? And I would say not yet.
Yeah, this is an interesting crack. Like, this is not... what were the terms that we used? Because this must be one of them, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, let's roll back to the show's outline.
So the terms that we use are simple criteria. They don't crack themselves. Vehicles do not crack themselves. They're usually tied to your playstyles or personal interests. So in this case, I love the idea of getting in a car and driving over my opponents. Mm-hmm. And they're good/fun in Commander. Oh no, we've reached the criteria that vehicles might not pass.
Oh, well, I mean, the thing about it is it's a puzzle to be solved.
Yep.
That's why we're trying to do this, is we want to practice solving puzzles and going, and having light bulb moments here.
Yeah.
And Shorikai is one of those cards where like, oh, but if I can get Kotori out, then Shorikai is actually a much better commander. Mm-hmm. And then does Kotori go into the 99? Or
which order does it go in? Is Kotori to commander instead?
And do you happen to have a template on your mind about how many creatures versus how many vehicles you're supposed to play?
This is one of the difficult reasons why it's tough, is that you have to have creatures to be able to crew your own vehicles. Otherwise, your vehicles are just empty vessels, literally vessels that don't do anything by themselves, and you may draw the wrong half of your deck. Only the creatures, only the vehicles. What do you do in that case?
So a vehicle must then do something on its own rather than just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, or you have to always guarantee that you're going to be able to get those pilots out. So that's why Shorikai is so nice, is because Shorikai makes pilots for you for a really cheap cost. So Neon Dynasty, it's getting there. Neon Dynasty added a bunch of cards. So Cyberdrive Awakener, Katsumasa the Animator, Imposter Mech, Reckoner Bankbuster. These are all cards that say, hey, we're making the better cards for this deck so it can work, but it's not yet at full crack state.
So it's on standby right now, and we're thinking about it.
Yeah, it's idling in the garage.
And at this point, we're kind of saying we're waiting for new cards to come out. So this is something like, if you're a vehicles player or you picked up this precon as your first deck or something, try to crack this card.
Yeah, for sure. Try to crack the idea of vehicles.
Yeah.
Right now, because of, I think it's Katsumasa the Animator, I thought, oh, you know what? There have been a lot of cards in Magic's history that turn artifacts into creatures.
Right.
In fact, one of our preview cards for the show was Rise and Shine, which overloads to turn each non-creature artifact into a 0/0 artifact creature, and then you put 1/1 counters on each artifact that became a creature this way. So turns your vehicles into 0/0s, but it makes them into vehicles, and it makes them into vehicles with 4/4s on it. Maybe you can animate your vehicles without needing to crew them with people, and that's the way you're going about it. You are Tezzeret animating your army of trucks, cyber trucks, to run over your opponent. Maybe that's how you crack it.
Is that where the Cybertruck came from?
Yeah, I guess so. Tezzeret was trying to make it. Okay, finally, one that you are interested in cracking. What is this? What is this?
So close to my heart. This is one of those things that it crosses your mind and a million commanders start running through your head.
Ooh, nice.
I went with the most simple one. But, okay, so we're talking about mutating to remove legendary from creatures. And why do you want to do that? Because you want to clone stuff.
Ooh.
So clone decks are really fun, but often players limit themselves to strategies that require something to remove legendary, like Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, which is 3 and a blue for a legendary creature. You may have Sakashima enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has the other abilities of Sagashima, which is the legend rule does not apply to permanents you control.
Ooh.
So now instantly you're able to unlock all kinds of strategies, and
Right.
it's a clone itself. Pretty good card. But then we'll lock ourselves into partner pairings of Vile Smasher and Sakashima, or this and Sakashima, and it's just not that exciting to me.
Because you always have to partner, and it kind of runs down the same lines.
Right, because you're stuck with these partners.
I see.
So I wanted to open it up to different type, to Omnath Locus of Creation, just to get straight to the point. Is let's go
Very
little
nice.
crazy.
Yeah, there you go.
Because the key here is if you mutate on top of non-human, which is a requirement of mutate, so our
Right.
commanders are a little limited, you can remove the super type legendary.
Right. We talked about this with Kami, which comes from Tatsunari. You mutate it, becomes a new thing, and now it's no longer the original creature's name. It's not even a legendary anymore.
Right, so you can just play all these old copy spells like Clone, Phantasmal Image, Fated Infatuation, just regular clone spells can now target your Omnath. And then there's a lot of amazing things about Omnath. Let's just read them. Omnath Locus of Creation.
Oh, boy.
He's a red, a green, a white, and a blue for total mana value for a legendary creature elemental. When Omnath Locus of Creation enters the battlefield, draw a card.
Nice.
Then landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. Okay. If this is the first time
That's
this
if the-
ability
yeah.
resolves.
Yeah.
However, if it's the second time, you add 4 mana, one of each of Omnath's colors. And if it's the third time, you deal 4 damage to each opponent.
Ooh.
So normally an Omnath deck can be nuts and crazy.
Right.
But imagine if you had 2, maybe 3. Let's say you had 10. You play one land, you gain 40 life. You crack it
You gain-
to
that's
go get
actually-
another land. You get 40 mana.
That's hilarious.
With that 40 mana, you must be able to do a third land drop somehow, right?
Yeah, and now you do 40 damage
40.
to everyone and instantly kill them.
Exactly. And there's a lot of commanders that would definitely benefit from this. Omnath is just one of them.
Right.
Like Ramos, Dragon Engine.
Oh, yeah. Whenever you cast a spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on Ramos, but you can remove 5 1/1 counters from it to add Chromat. What's his name?
Progenitus.
Progenitus mana, which is white, white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green. But you can
10
only do it
mana.
once a turn. So
Yeah.
if you have multiple Ramoses.
So I think also the fact that you're making giant dragons with a ton of 1/1 counters on them
Yeah.
is pretty relevant. Mutating is casting a spell, so you get those triggers.
Oh, nice. That's right.
And that's just one of them. And then there's also Alayla, Artful Provocateur. She'll be
Right.
pumping out a ton of tokens over time and buffing the flyers with +1/+. Oh, that's a great card.
Yeah, multiple Alaylas just seems such an impressive board state because every time you cast an artifact or enchantment, you make a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. So you can make
crazy.
5, 6, 7, 20 of. Okay, more like 3, probably 4, but still pretty crazy.
But my favorite one is because we're telling Magic, you're not going to limit me. Tuvasa the Sunlit. So she gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control, and whenever you cast your first enchantment spell each turn, draw a card.
Oh my
Your first,
goodness.
You're not going to limit me.
That's right.
I've got 5 Tuvasas.
They're all firsts.
They're all first. You're going to be drawing so many cards because, as we know, having an Enchantress in the command zone is wild, but
Yeah,
having
very
one with
much.
blue in it is even more crazy.
That's right, because you need all the copy effects too, and blue's got that.
Exactly. The reason that Omnath works so well, though, is kind of what ties into the downsides of the strategy, is you need to be all in.
Oh, I see.
Like, basically, in this Omnath deck, I'm playing most of the mutate creatures that I can because mutating is a priority. I have faith that eventually I'll draw into a clone. That'll be fine.
Right. If you don't mutate, then you don't. The strategy doesn't get going.
It doesn't do anything because if you draw a clone and all you have is a legendary creature out, nada.
And you have 4 colors because of Omnath to choose from as many. And so at some point, you're probably playing less than ideal mutate creatures just to get more mutate, right?
Exactly. And so when you go to an artifact deck like a Layla, it would be cool to have multiple Laylas, but the package included with the cloning and the mutate is so substantial that it might weigh the deck down. So this is something that I feel like Omnath is a crack commander on its own. It should have been on our list earlier.
It definitely is an
for cards
all-in
to
for
crack
sure. Yeah,
itself.
it's a card that cracks itself. Yeah.
Yeah, it feeds itself mana and all this stuff.
But hey, because it cracks itself, you said I'm going to do something that cracks it even further.
Oh yeah, I'm going to make it worse.
That's great. Yeah, I really like that a lot. I like the idea of removing legendary. It's one of the most sort of like defining rules of Commander. You can only have one copy of that legendary creature. So why not try and get around it and then do some really interesting things?
Yeah, the second spell, the first
the
those
first spell you
clauses
class, only as a
they don't
sorcery.
mean nothing to us when we're mutating and cloning.
Yeah, what do you mean it only happens once a turn? I'll show you, magic.
Not in this town.
Not in this town. All right, next up we have commanders that aren't commanders. This is actually something that Josh introduced to me very, very on because he had a hidden Nekusar deck. So this is kind of fun because obviously, in the singleton format, you can be like, well, it's a not legendary creature, so I don't care about the strategy.
Right.
So I'd rather build around the commander because I know I'll always have that card. I can't always tutor out my Bramble Sovereign. That's just asking a lot. So commanders that aren't commanders is definitely a very big thing here, and you actually have a deck that resonates with this really well.
Yeah, one of my favorites is 4-color Brutaclad.
Brutaclad
is 4, a blue and a red, and it's a legendary artifact creature, Artificer. It's a 4/4, and it says creature tokens you control have haste, and then at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue mirror artifact creature token. Then you may choose one of the tokens you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token.
So tons of shenanigans possible with Brutaclad, but it's only red-blue.
Right, and forever this deck was just a 4-color deck. Recently, I've been diving into maybe Garth One-Eye
nice.
as the finisher
5-color
here.
version, yeah.
Exactly, because imagine you've got all of your tokens sleeved up, and I've got a clue over here, a treasure over here, and a Black Lotus token from Garth over here.
Nice.
Then I'll play my Shivan Dragon token. I've got Brutaclad out, and on the backside, I've got a Shivan Dragon.
On each of them, that's where you're always trying to go. You're just trying to always flip them into Shivan Dragon.
They were always Shivan Dragons. Yeah, isn't it fun? Like, it's just one of those first cards that I really tried to crack where I was so excited about, like, wait a second, because you can tutor this out in so many different ways. It's an artifact. It's a creature with 6 CMC or greater.
Oh, right.
There's a lot of different ways that you can go get this guy. And the fact that it's a creature, Worldly Tutor is now available to us.
Right.
Like, there's so many things that
you can get them out with, and that's great. Actually, I like the text here because this is something we didn't really talk about, which is it's an ability that has an incredible amount of potential, but you're the one that has to discover, okay, what happens when I turn a clue token into this? And when that goes into that, oh, wow, there's something really interesting you can do with Brutaclad as a result because it says tokens.
Yeah, there are a lot of strategies where new cards will come out and we'll look at them and say, oh, this makes tokens. Yeah, it's good in Brutaclad, but it's not good in anywhere else.
Right.
Or like Chromatic Orrery. Yeah, it's good in Joda, but it's not good in everywhere else.
Yeah.
But we can't limit ourselves as players just by color identity because who knows what's possible? You should really give it a try.
Yeah.
Fierce Empath. There are plenty of cards that can go get this guy.
Fierce Empath is a great example. I play that in my Animar deck.
Yeah, and next on the non-commander list are non-commanders that aren't legendary creatures. So, like my friend Jim from the Spike Feeders.
Shout out, Jim.
Shout out to Jim. He's actually been on the podcast recently.
Right. Yeah. Shout out. Thanks for being on the podcast, Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to town. We appreciate you.
So he's got an Ozolith deck. This thing is so cool. It just takes all the counters, keeps sucking everything in. Come on, give me a hexproof counter. I'll take a lifelink and a death touch.
And a blossom, whatever I can get.
You animate the Ozolith. And now it's the nastiest creature in town.
Because it's got every single counter on it. Yeah, that's hilarious.
It's like, what's that angel that has all the keywords on it?
Oh, Baneslayer Angel, but it's Baneslayer Ozolith.
Baneslayer Ozolith. And in his case, he actually turns 0, asks people, do you mind if I run this as my commander?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he runs it as a blue-black deck.
Oh.
But it's still functional without that. Again, it's an artifact.
He can still play it as blue-black. He puts it in his deck. He'll find another way to get it.
There's a lot of ways to get it. Manson Lung, one of our editors, has a Helm of the Host deck and a Villainous Wealth deck. Both of these decks are totally built around
that card,
a non-commander card. And he has pulled it off every single time that I've seen him play it.
No, that's great. Yeah, I love that idea. And there's also cards built around mechanics as well. There's the flip cards off the top of your library to get a new one mechanic. That's like a deck that I think Manson also built around as well.
Yeah. One of my favorite non-commander cards that I keep trying to crack that I haven't yet. It's kind of like a shout out to our audience. Like, y'all got to fix this for me.
Please help me.
Electrostatic Pummeler.
Okay, this is a fun one. I'll read it. So it's 3 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature construct, and it uses a mechanic from Ether Revolt, and Kaladesh that is not around anymore called Energy. So when Electrostatic Pummeler enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. You just mark this somewhere else. It's like a separate mana pool that never goes down until you use it. You can pay 3 energy, and it gets +X until end of turn, where X is its power.
So you double its power.
Okay, right.
And then if you have more energy, you can keep doubling and doubling. Let's say you can pump it or something.
Right.
Give it +3/+3. You double it a certain number of times.
It's going to be huge.
And then you cast Fling. You sacrifice the creature and it deals that much damage.
Now you're talking.
This was a deck that I played in Standard, and I've actually got it framed on my wall.
Oh, really?
Because I loved it so much, and it was like it
Fling the
represented
Pummeler deck, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is important to represent is I loved that deck.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of when I first got into Magic and I started brewing. It's so iconic
nice.
to me as a deck that I want
It
to make
speaks to your
it
play
work in
style. It speaks to your player, you as a player.
Right. It's just so hard to make not only an energy deck work, but an electrostatic pummeler deck work.
Yeah, maybe it's fling.deck. Maybe you have other creatures that can get their power really high. You're playing Chandra's Ignition, all those types of cards in there.
You bounce them a bunch of time to get
more and more of it. Yeah.
Or you create an army of electrostatic pummelers and you swing them all at one player. They can only block a couple, and you pump the one that wasn't blocked.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody please crack electrostatic pummeler for me.
Getting in for the crack. That's great. I really like that. And now why it's tough, obviously, when you're playing these hidden commander type decks, you got to find the card. You got to tutor for it. You have to search for it. And that takes up slots.
Yep.
It definitely is also a little clunky because it's like, I can cast my commander, but I actually have to do it in 2 separate stages. I have to tutor for it, and then I have to cast it, as opposed to just having it in your command zone. If it dies, oh no, what do I do? Reanimate it? Shuffle it back in my library? Tutor for it again?
But I think seeing tutors go get something stupid is a lot more fun than seeing tutors go get a counter
The
spell.
perfect answer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like that about. Major upside though, we wrote down here, non-commanders are what cracking cards is all about. Yeah, right. I agree. The first time that Josh brought that hidden Nekasar deck to the table, I was like, wait, this is brilliant. Everyone should just play a 5-color deck and then have the card they want as the commander hidden in there, and they can play all 5 colors. But I learned it's actually not that simple, and it's great when it does come together, because for me as a player, it's like, I don't know what I'm up against. So I'm excited to see what unfolds as the table goes on.
And I've talked about this on the show before I worked here, and I was still doing MTG Tonight.
Oh, yeah.
I was part of the Commander Summit. Playing Hidden Commander is so much stinking fun.
Yeah.
So you start with your commander face down.
Oh, right.
And when it becomes relevant with an Eminence ability or whenever it's
play it or whatever,
you want to cast it, then you show everybody what you're playing. So then the first 3-4 turns is, wait, are you playing a Boros deck? No way.
No. Oh, wait, no, there is another. No, there isn't. Oh, but it's not an equipment deck. You just played an artifact. Wait.
Yeah.
What could your commander be?
It's a really fun guessing game, and it adds an extra level of excitement to the first few turns. But this brings that mechanically into Commander proper.
Yeah. I really like that a lot. That's awesome. Big shout out to everyone that's built a hidden commander deck.
Yeah.
All right, we have some honorable mentions. So a card recently that got, we did a podcast episode about it, mini cast with Murph and Josh Lee Kwai. Rune of the Hidden Realm and Stifle abilities, because of how they changed the way that commander die triggers work. Rune and the Stifle ability, if you don't make it, if you're like, yeah, sure, I'll come back because of Rune, you can actually permanently exile a commander forever. So that's like cracking a card based on a rule that allows you to have a new, interesting way of powering up a commander that you didn't have before.
And let's be honest here. This is wrong. You shouldn't do this.
Yeah. If it wasn't clear, this is definitely something. I mean, imagine doing this to a new player, being like, all right, I'll use Rune on your commander. It's got an enter the battlefield ability, right? And they're like, oh boy, thanks. Can't wait for it to come back.
Yeah, do me a favor. If somebody does this to you, then send them this time code, and we'll tell them right now.
Yeah,
you've done something wrong.
Don't do this, please.
You shouldn't have done that.
But you are cracking the code on the card, and we do applaud you for that.
Science has gone too far.
Science has gone too far.
You're a perfect example.
Yeah, thank you. But no thanks at the same time. But it's a great way of, again, looking, there's a new thing. Whoa, we can actually do something new with it that wasn't possible before, and that's really playing with the rules and all that.
That's interesting.
That's interesting.
Things change over time, and that's kind of fun. But sometimes there are unexpected results.
Yeah, as in your friend does not enjoy playing with you, and as a result.
Friend?
Friend? Oh, yeah. You can't call him a friend anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, lose my number.
All right, next up we have a card that I am really excited about. I never knew this card existed. It's called Reincarnation. 1 green instant. Choose target creature. When that creature dies this turn, return the creature from its owner's graveyard to the battlefield under the control of that creature's owner.
Why have I never heard of this card?
It came out in the old Commander set, I believe. So you can, it might be even older than that, but you can choose someone else's creature. If it dies, it gets back. But they choose any card from the graveyard, by the way, to bring it back on the battlefield.
Wow.
You also can now target your commander if a board wipe happens, because your commander does die. So you can have your commander die, have it still go to the command zone, and then you can get the second part of this where you choose another creature in your graveyard and put that back onto the battlefield.
It's like a better necromantic selection. And if somebody else casts a board wipe.
Yeah, exactly.
There's your dream
There's
scenario.
the dream, yeah. So you can actually, so Reincarnation now is a card that gets better. So maybe there's a deck where you're just playing all of those effects that say when the creature dies this turn, return to the battlefield under its control. So you're like trying to use those kinds of things to bring them back over and over and over again.
And my brain is trying to connect, like, wait, does this relate to Kami at all? It must mean something.
It could be Kami. Our last honorable mention is one that, or second to last honorable mention is one that broke my brain. Do you know about this card and how it works now?
I actually traded mine away. It was one of the first cards I ever bought, and I traded it away.
Oh, that's great. Well, then you have a nice connection to it. So Selvala Explorer returned. It's 1 green white for a 2/4, but it has an ability called Parlay. So you tap it. Each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, add green to your mana pool, and you gain 1 life. Then each player draws a card.
Seems like a nice people card.
It definitely is a nice
Wouldn't it
people
be?
card. Yeah, it is. So it's really weird because... Okay, so if you activate Savala's ability when you're casting a spell, you'll get like, I want to cast this 10-drop. You try and cast it, and then you tap Savala in response, and you realize you can't actually produce enough mana to pay the spell's cost. The spell you cast gets reversed. It returns to whatever zone you cast it from, your command zone, your hand, whatever. And then Savala's ability, however, cannot be reversed at that point because you used it in response to you trying to cast the card. So the mana is going to be in the mana pool. Each player will have drawn a card. And there's like some weird interactions that will happen where you can actually get people to draw the card upside down and it remains upside down for the remainder of time you've drawn it. I don't know the exact specifications of this, but it's just a very weird thing that happens because you can tap this and not have enough mana. And then the spell you cast it gets reversed. Everyone sees it, but it goes back to your hand. So it's a very strange interaction. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but there are weird things you can do with this because of the way it's worded. So I'm still waiting to figure out, is there an actual viable way to use this thing where you're like making everyone reveal the top card of their library, or you're forcing people to draw cards upside down into their hands that they cannot flip over?
That is crazy.
It's very crazy.
It's like the magic rules have become self-aware.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wait, hold on, everyone, pull it back. We can't actually do this thing. But you all just revealed information as a part of the casting cost, and that... I don't know.
There are free radicals that are being introduced into the magic rules that are quite frightening.
So if you're a judge out there, please let me know, because that is definitely something that is very hard to understand. And then finally, there's a rule change recently that you could crack the code, but now you can't anymore. Split cards used to have different, used to be considered differently mana value wise. So we used to have cards like Valky/Tybalt. Valky is a 1 in the black on one side and 5 are red in the black on the other. But if you cascaded into Valky as a 2-drop, you could cast the 7-drop side for free.
That is wild.
Until they changed the rule. So that was a version of like, oh, here's another, rules thing that we can get around, exploit, crack, break the code on. So it gets an honorable mention because I really love the idea of casting a 7-mana Planeswalker off a 2-mana cascade.
Man, that makes me so sad that we're ending this cracked, crazy, turbulent episode on such a disappointment.
Yeah, it's true. I'm so sorry. Well, you know what is not a disappointment? To the listeners, every single thing you're going to comment on this episode hopefully will make our brains go kaplooey.
They might have plenty to say about us being total fools. You could just see it right there on the card.
How did you not know?
How did you not know how to break Bramble Sovereign?
Yeah, and the final thing to the listeners as well, don't worry, you can still play Korvold and Chulane. Yeah. Jake and I won't hold it against you.
Yeah, we're not always card crackers. Sometimes we're something else.
Yeah, we're just having fun. Lower effort, still effort counts. Oh boy, I can't take myself out of that one.
I think I can't take myself out of what I said either. We should probably edit that out.
Well, hopefully this podcast episode brings your inner, I was going to say crack child out. The inner person within you that wants to crack and break cards open and gives you a little bit of that taste, that idea. Because I think I would posit that almost every Magic player after a certain point has had this inclination and urge. So we'd love to see and hear from you all, the listeners, what you have in mind in terms of how to crack some of the cards we talked about, or things that you're doing to crack cards that makes your opponents and players in your playgroup go, nice.
Yeah, if you find yourself saying, do people know about this? Do they know that this is possible? And you look it up, the rules, check out and everything, get in the comments.
Let us know. All right. Big time shout out to channelfireball.com/command. We talked about a lot of cards today. Maybe there's something in there that has piqued your interest, or you're thinking about that pet card from a couple years back. Use that code affiliate link, channelfireball.com/command. You can get all your Magic products, single sealed product, and more, and you're supporting local game stores while doing so. And when you get those cards, put them into Ultra Pro sleeves. Gotta put them into a sleeve. That's the ultimate cracked move. How do you protect your card? Sleeve it up. Keep it protected. Play it on an awesome playmat. So supporting Ultra Pro also supports the show. Okay, moving on to the end step, where we talk about something cool outside the world of Magic. I'm excited about this one, Jake, because I'm going to put it all on you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're making a brand new show that I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've watched both episodes. Now they're out.
Oh, good.
And the second episode, you did something that made me chuckle wholeheartedly because it matches perfectly with what you're doing as well as what you need to do with the edit.
Oh, yeah?
That was just brilliant. Yeah, the internal monologue. But please explain to the viewer what you're doing for gameplay that is not Magic the Gathering.
Sure. So I am really into the Digimon Tcg. We actually talked about it months ago. The Digimon Tcg is just so fun, and the audience for it, for some reason, seems to come from a lot of other games like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Cardfight Vanguard.
Right.
Really anime games. So I thought, man, wouldn't it be fun to kind of do the Yu-Gi-Oh! Treatment on top of this stuff? So whenever a player is thinking about something, the whole thing is voice acting.
Yep.
Like, I sounded like Weevil Underwood in the last one.
Yeah, that one was hilarious. It was great.
Like if I want to communicate something to the viewer on game nights, what we do is we find an interview bite that supports that. On my show, I can just say, I've got to start stinging her security soon if I want to win this game, but I need to draw a level 5.
And it's the perfect scene where it's just the character's face, their mouth isn't moving, but they're saying it in their head with the music playing and everything, and you know that's exactly what they're thinking, but they don't need to have the expository moment where they say it to their opponent. They're internal monologuing it.
Yeah, like what do I need my audience to understand about the situation? Well, why don't I just tell them?
Yeah, when you're like, I hate securities in this last one, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, and then we try to lean into the JRPG elements too, with the subtitles and all that stuff, and some 3D animation and stuff. It's a really fun project to have on the back burner.
It makes me want to play the game because it's like, oh man, I want to digivolve something and draw a card. That sounds like a lot of fun. And all the names are fun, and you got the really high-res card imagery on the right and left too when it happens. So if you're...
It's all AI upsampled.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. It looks so good.
Those are like 400 pixels tall.
Wow. Incredible. So it looks amazing. Jake, where can they find that online if they want to get a taste of real Digimon gameplay?
We are at Digiboss Battle. It's a really fun experience getting to brand something after watching you guys do something so successful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I think it's awesome.
I've learned a lot.
I have no idea where you have the free time to do it, but I applaud you for getting out there and making a whole nother gameplay show about another card game.
Well, some people play video games. For me, editing is like video games.
There you go. So. That's a great way of you've cracked the case. You don't need to play video games. You can just edit instead. And it feels like a video game.
What if work was enjoyable?
Yeah, that's great question, by the way, for everyone to think about. Okay, well, make sure you check it out, Digiboss Battle. You can look it up on YouTube, and then I'm sure we'll play a bunch of clips over this. As long as we get the rights to do so, please let us know.
Oh, yeah. You try playing one of my clips, I'll get you in trouble.
Yeah, don't DMCA us, please. Okay, Cleanup set. Big thanks to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. We have Damon Lenz, Sean Gillis, Arthur Landcraft, Ashlyn Rose. I'm saying everyone's name crazy.
Ashlyn.
Lady Danger, Manson Long, Craig Blanchett, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, sitting right next to me, Patrick Nan, Jordan Pridgeon, Sam Waller, Grav Glide, Truck Tie, Jamie Block, Mitch Trafford, Evan Limburger, and Josh Lee Kwai of Game Knives fame.
That's so many names, dude. Look at you.
A lot of names. Look at us. We were down in the kitchen earlier, and it was like, I think you said it. You were like, there's so many people here.
Yeah, and don't be shy. We were celebrating Jimmy's birthday.
My birthday. Yay. Yeah, so that was crazy. And that wasn't even the full team, too. We still had a couple people that weren't there. So
some work from home people.
It's great. Big thanks to you, the audience, on our Patreon, on our Kickstarters, on our content. You're the ones that let us have this big team and keep making awesome content.
Yeah, this has been a wild ride of a couple of years, and it's all thanks to patrons. Like, you changed a lot of our lives.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Big time.
And we get to play with you as fans. You can still audition for game nights right now if you go to patreon.com/Command Zone.
A lot of big stuff on that Patreon to take a look at. If you've been a patron of the Command Zone in the past, you should log in and check up on the situation over there.
Yeah, it's very different.
Big time different.
A lot of new stuff and the chance to play with Command Zone members, including Josh and myself on Spell Table. Just don't play your Atali deck, right?
Yeah, don't play an Atali deck against us, or you know what? You'll have to grab my deck by hand.
Yeah. How are you going to get a card off my library? You can't even touch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, check that out, patreon.com/Command Zone. Big thanks to Jeffrey Palmer. He does the living card animations that start the show off. And well, I hope you all have a great day. Jake, thanks for joining me today on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you all next time. Peace.
For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.